Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. I have a question for all my viewers, listeners. Can any of you give me one reason, just one reason, for Trudeau to continue imposing the Emergency Measures Act? Just one reason. Any Liberal or NDPer out there who can give me one reason? For a moment, let's ignore whether this Measures Act should have been imposed in the first place. Okay, just for a moment, let's forget that. But let us instead, today, deal with the fact that the Liberals and their lovers, the NDP, have voted to continue with it until sometime in mid-March. So, can you think of a single reason, one single reason, to continue with this very draconian law, which, by the way, is being panned around the world? Editorials in London Times, in the New York Times, Financial Post, highly, highly critical. So we are getting, among other things, a very black face around the world in places that count. But what possible reason is there to continue? Forget whether it should have been imposed in the first place. What reason is there to continue? I mean, the trucks have left Ottawa. All border crossings are now free-flowing, which, by the way, were cleared long before the Emergency Measures Act was imposed, right? The Emergency Measures Act says it is imposed or supposed to be imposed only in the event of, quote, a national security issue which cannot be dealt with using existing laws. A national security issue. Now, Trudeau and his loving partner, Jagmeet Singh, say, well, we needed authority to freeze bank accounts, which is not provided by existing laws. And that is true. It is true that the Emergency Measures Act does allow banks to freeze amounts without judicial oversight or appeal. And as we all know, more than 200 bank accounts were frozen. But, and this is very important, we are now being told that most of the frozen accounts, bank accounts, have been freed up. Most likely because the Liberals' own lawyers told them that freezing bank accounts under these conditions is a direct contravention, of our charter rights. But for whatever reason, it's obvious the trucks are gone, the bridges are open, and they no longer need to freeze bank accounts. So why are they continuing with the Emergency Measures Act? I mean, I have a question for you. If you believe we still need to continue with this, I'd like you to tell me, in your view, what threat to national security exists that our police and CSIS cannot deal with existing laws? If there is indeed, now this is a good point, folks. I haven't heard anybody else say this. If indeed there is a threat to national security that CSIS and police cannot deal with, I think we Canadians deserve to be informed. What is it? Is Russia poised to attack us? Is the United States considering, I don't know, expropriating British Columbia? Is the FLQ raising its ugly head again in Quebec? What is it? What is the serious threat to national security? What kind of risk are we as individual Canadians facing? This sounds pretty serious. A national security risk still in existence, so serious that CSIS and police can't deal with it? We'd better know what it is. Maybe we should go out and buy ourselves some, I don't know, vests, maybe we should arm ourselves. Maybe we should all get down to the Carp Diefenbunker. I don't know. Sounds pretty serious. What is it? What if there's a national security risk here so serious that CSIS and the police can't deal with it? Do you not feel that we as Canadians are entitled to know what it is? And if there isn't such a security risk, then my original question: why are we continuing with this? I have another observation that I would like your opinion on. A Liberal appointed judge has denied bail for Tamara Leach. She's one of the leaders of the protest convoy. Now, Tamara will have to stay in jail until the court case is held, which in Canada could be anywhere within the next few weeks, next months, maybe a year, without bail. Look, no matter what your view is of Miss Leach, whether you think she's guilty or not, let me just point out that it is not uncommon in this country for judges to grant bail to those who are charged with murder and rape. Now, the charges against Miss Leach are mischief, serious charge. But the judge feels, apparently, that Miss Leach, charged with mischief, is a greater danger to national security in this country than those who have been charged with murder or rape. I don't know. It doesn't sound like justice to me. It sounds like ideology. It sounds like justice is being overridden here by politics. Is it politics or is it justice that keeps Tamara Leach in jail? And okay, you think she should stay in jail? Then explain to me why those accused of murder can get out on bail. Not always, but more often than not. Do you have any thoughts on that? I think one of the questions I have is justice in this country now based on political beliefs? And by the way, in this regard, conservative Chuck Strahl, so I know Chuck quite well, he's been around for a long time, says he has confirmed that a single mother in Chilliwack, BC, has had her bank account frozen. Her crime, she donated $50, perfectly legal, donated $50 to the convoy. And for this, her bank account has been frozen. Strahl says, I know this woman. I have met her. I have seen the $50 receipt, and I have seen that her bank account has been frozen. So I say, so much for going after the big guys, right? A single mom? $50? Now, it could be that her bank account's been unfrozen, but the fact of the point I'm trying to make here is that this law, it's perfectly legal under this law to freeze this woman's bank account for donating $50 at a time when it was perfectly legal. That's justice, folks, under Justin Trudeau. Your views on that, please. And I once again to say is, in view of all of this, do you see any justification for continuing with this act? It's quite astonishing. And I have one more question here, okay? And then I'll turn it over to you. And I want you to be honest, not that you're not, but please be honest. Do you honestly think that Jagmeet Singh and his holier-than-thou progressives would have voted to freeze the bank accounts of protesting Aboriginals? Do you think Jagmeet Singh and his beloved progressives would have voted to freeze the bank accounts of left-wing environmentalists protesting pipelines? Do you think Jagmeet Singh and his progressives would have voted to freeze the bank accounts of protesting gays? And finally, do you think Jagmeet Singh and his progressives would have voted to freeze the bank accounts of Black Lives Matter protesters? Good questions, eh? And finally, I have one more. Do you think Jagmeet Singh and his progressives would have voted to freeze the bank accounts of ordinary people, blue collar workers, working moms? Well, I'll answer that. Yeah, they did. Voted to freeze the bank accounts of a single mother who legally donated $50. Thus, the state of the NDP today, the working mom's friend. John, what have we got?
We've got lots of comments coming in on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Your emails are welcome as well. Lowell at blasttheradio.com. We'd love a call to the show. 613-413-2217. Feel free to text that number as well. All right, Lowell, here we go. Caroline on Facebook says, tyrannical power grab. Anne says, as long as the NDP supports this act, how does it get reversed? Does Parliament have to vote for it to continue after March?
That's a good question. I'm sorry that I don't have the answer. I know that at least this is scary because they now have the power to keep this until March 15th, sometime in mid-March. But at least 2 cabinet ministers have already stated that they may extend it. So would that require another vote in Parliament? I'm not sure. But very clearly, the kiss-ass NDP is going to support. So it doesn't matter how many votes. The kiss-assers are going to continue to support it, which means that the fact of the matter is that Justin Trudeau now has the power to enforce this draconian law for the rest of his term. That's a fact. Go ahead, please.
Here's a text. Again, the number is 613-413-2217. Hi, Lowell. I would think they have to go through with this act because if they don't, what they did by freezing accounts, etc., would be against the law. They can also keep Tamara Leach in custody for as long as they want since they think she's a threat to reorganize the truckers again. Singh is a flake. Trudeau want a bee who should never have power. Kathy says there is another vote on the Emergency Act this Monday coming.
Yeah, next week sometime. They and you can thank the Conservatives for this. But I mean, we know what the result is going to be because Jagmeet Singh and his wonderful left-wing progressives, the working mom's friend, are going to vote to continue with it. So they can have as many. The only thing is, and I think Brian Lilly in The Sun today points this out, and it's a good point, and that is that once again, Trudeau is going to have to explain why he feels that it's justified to keep this thing in place. I mean, folks, the trucks are gone. And by the way, the trucks are all off the bridges long before they imposed the Emergency Act, right? So we didn't need the Emergency Act to clear the bridges, which was the major problem. There's no question the truckers were a great irritant in Ottawa. No question about it, honking horns, etc. But there was no violence. So, and they should have, I'm not denying that they what they did was illegal, declared illegal. They should have gone. But they're certainly being punished for it. So, but what's the justification for continuing? The trucks are gone. The bridges are open. They're unfreezing the bank accounts. So is there some great, now I want you to, folks, please, because it seems to me that what the government is signaling is that there is still this very serious, grave national security problem that's out there, risk, danger. So serious that our own CSIS and our own police, including the RCMP, the OPP, and the local police cannot deal with it. What I am saying is, if in fact there is this kind of national security risk, we Canadians should know that we can prepare for it. Should we get protective vests for ourselves? Should we arm ourselves? Should we take judo courses? What should we do if this grave national security risks exist? Don't forget, so serious that our own security forces can't deal with it. That's what because if they continue with this, that is what they are saying. Do you believe that? John, go ahead, please.
Lots of comments coming in. Keep them coming in. I'll post as many on the screen as I can for our viewers and read as many as I can for those listening on blasttheradio.com and on the podcast. A text at 613-413-2217. Did they freeze the bank accounts of the cops who donated? I have not heard
I
that.
don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
As I said, the whole thing is covered in darkness. We are now told, and I have some inside information why they're doing this. We are now told that they are unfreezing most, if not all, of the bank accounts. The reason for this is, as you know, the Civil Liberties Association has launched a lawsuit saying that this is unjustified and is a contravention of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Liberals' own lawyers have told Trudeau, have told Butts, have told the Liberals, listen, this thing cannot fly. It is illegal. There is no justification for this. So as a consequence, they're freeing up the bank accounts. They're afraid of, the Liberals are very afraid of a civil lawsuit. Go ahead, please.
Let me see. Hilarious. Trudeau talking about people wanting their freedom in Ukraine, says Wallace. Let me see. From earlier, Gina says, how will the stockholders of the banks feel when the people all start closing their accounts and the stocks fall?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the information we have now is that most, if not all, of the frozen bank accounts have been freed. What they were doing was illegal. Even though the Act justifies it, the Civil Liberties, and by the way, the Civil Liberties Association is not the only one that is suing the government over this. I repeat, the Liberals' own lawyers warned them that they would likely lose and that there's a chance for a major civil suit against them. Go ahead, John.
On Facebook, Lisa chimes in to say if Tamara's judge was in fact a Liberal candidate and she is a Liberal donor, there should be a move to request a new judge/bias. Chrissy's watching on Twitch. She says, this freezing of accounts has sure brought up good points by Lowell. What's next? Start freezing more in the future in regards to other situations? There is more to worry about than freezing these people's accounts who thought they were doing a nice thing to help out.
Actually, she's got a very good point. What essentially we're talking about is almost unlimited power in the hands of one man who in the past has indicated that he doesn't always make the wisest of decisions. This is tremendous power. And in fact, the London Times and the New York Times is saying essentially the same thing, that this is becoming very close to fascism, coming very close to dictatorship. When you put this kind of power in the hands of one person with no checks and no balances. Don't forget, these frozen bank accounts could be carried out without any judicial overview and no appeal. Now, if that's not fascism, you better explain to me what fascism is. Look up in the dictionary. Go ahead, John, please.
An email from Robert. The email address here is lowell@blasttheradio.com. Robert says there's only one reason to continue with the act. The country's prime minister is determined to punish all those that either took part or supported a protest opposing his authority. We know this because his own justice minister, David Lametti, said, quote, if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who is donating hundreds of thousands of dollars, and millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried, unquote. And to answer your question...
actually, you know what? I'm really glad that was sent, because that's true. This is our justice minister made that statement. If you are a Trump supporter, wait a minute. It's now illegal to support verbally or emotionally an American politician. We're not allowed to support who we want anymore. We can be punished. Lametti says, our Justice Minister of Canada, in effect said, hey, if you're a supporter of Trump, you have reason to be worried. What? He said it. Go ahead, John.
Daryl is on Facebook. He says, this is called control by Schwab, controlling Trudeau government. It's all over the internet. Chris says the only reason I can think of for this act to continue would be buying time for the police and perhaps ceases to continue to investigate more people. What happens to all the people from different countries who donated, he asks.
No, but you can investigate these people. If they have been charged with something, you can investigate. You don't need the Emergency Act for that. Go ahead, please.
Kim says Justin's half-brother, whom I imagine knows him quite well, has spoken out against giving him that much power.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Isn't it?
I think, the second time, John, that his half-brother has been highly critical of Trudeau in this. Go ahead, please.
You know what? It's 20 after the hour. Let's get a word in here for Shields.
Absolutely. Now, you and I, John, we're discussing, and we did before the show, air fryers. And I am serving notice, my wife can hear me right now, that we are going to get an air fryer, and we're going to get it. We're going to get it from Shields because I know, first of all, these are good people. They support me. They support a lot of you people out there, and they've got good prices. So we're going to get an air fryer.
You're going to
Uh,
love it. You're going to
I'm going
love it.
to. And by the way, Shields has got some really good bargains right now on air fryer. They have a very good selection. Go to their website, check out the appliances, and then look under air fryers. They've got all the latest styles, sizes, etc. One of the things that fascinates me about air fryers is you're telling me that you just plug it in, which means they use far less electricity than a conventional oven.
Yep.
And they do. You say that the roasts are really good, nice and tender.
Sue did a roast beef for me on the weekend for my birthday, Lowell. It is, and I'm a huge roast beef guy. Probably the best roast beef I have ever had.
All right, I'm serving notice to Shields right now. Please pay attention. We're going to get an air fryer. I'm going to check out the different sizes and so forth. And don't forget, actually, to be very honest, John, I won't be making the final decision here. There is another person in this house who will be. However,
I've been to your house. I know how things work.
I may need you to help persuade her.
See, I had to do the same thing. I ordered mine in. It just arrived, and we had to deal with it from there. All right, here we go. James is recommending chicken wings in the air fryer, by the way.
Wonderful.
But back to the conversation at hand. Lisa says, Justin's half-brother has been calling on Justin to step down. He's been speaking out against him through this entire thing. Nancy said he just said Justin's COVID scam also. Let me see. We have one, says Craig, you'll love it. Okay, so we're on about air fryers. Love my air fryer, says Lisa. Let's get back to the politics here. Darlene says this act is a scare tactic combined with controlling us Canadians, make us feel threatened. Trudeau should not have this kind of control. Clowns belong in a circus. Let me see. A text, 613-413-2217. The national security risk is just smoke and mirrors by Trudeau. He's copying Donald Trump's way of using national security as an excuse to change trade deals and a way to change whatever previous governments have done. I wonder if Trudeau did blackface because he has more half-brothers than we know about and that this is a national security risk.
Let's be fair here. Okay.
Wow. We're there. Okay.
Oh, by the way, I have to apprise you of this. Someone by the name, well, he gives his name as Bobby Mitchell, posted, I guess, 5 or 6 posts yesterday.
Yep.
I called him every name in the book because he is anti-Semitic. He says that this is all being caused by a Zionist cabal. In other words, that it's all the responsibility of the Jews. So for one of the... I have many people who are angry at me, call me all sorts of names. I think I've only blocked maybe 2 people in the past, but I blocked Bobby Mitchell yesterday. I cannot abide people who are anti-Semitic. After everything that's happened to the Jews throughout history, I just cannot stand anybody who is anti-Semitic today, as far as I am concerned, is what I called Bobby Mitchell is a pig. And he's not going to get on this show. Go ahead. That's that. So I blocked Bobby Mitchell. Okay, go ahead, John, please.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, Lowell, and I know
Yes,
you're not nearly as quick to do that as I am. So I can speak to that. Sam says, does this not need to go through the Senate? Referring to the Emergency Measures Act, it is being debated in the Senate as we speak.
Yeah, but the Liberals dominate. The Liberals and NDP dominate the Senate as well. So it's a foregone conclusion.
Cheryl says, what about Bill C-36, also Bill C-11 that they want to pass?
Yeah, these are bills that threaten people like you and I, John, that say that, for example, that this show, that we should have to be licensed and under the control of the CRTC. Well, I had about 60 years under the thumb of the CRTC, and I sure as hell don't plan to do it again. Go ahead.
Ray says, wondering if we text you or comment on Facebook our views on our country's politics and tactics, will we be put on notice? I've refrained from commenting or watching any videos of convoys just in case, says Ray.
Well, that's a very good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but all I can think is that if a $50 donation from a single mother in Chilliwack, when this is perfectly legal, can get her bank account frozen. I mean, that just sends chills up and down my spine. I mean, you would think that this was Russia, that this is something like I don't even know if Putin has that kind of power. I don't know. Go ahead, please.
Steve, just in moments ago on Facebook to say Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are now saying they voted with the Liberals because they considered Monday's vote to be a vote of confidence. The frozen bank accounts scared him because he's just as responsible as Trudeau is now.
Let me comment on that. Yeah, this was Justin Trudeau said this is going to be a vote of confidence because there were several Liberals, backbenchers, who were prepared to vote against it, as was the NDP. But the NDP has always been classed itself or described itself as, Canada's conscience. They sold themselves and still do as the political party of principle. Well, what principles are there? I mean, obviously they have no principles whatsoever. Jagmeet Singh said that he is voting for this draconian measure reluctantly, which means they don't want to. But they don't want an election. So in other words, he is more concerned about the fate of his party in the next election than he is about the fate of Canada. He voted for a measure that he knows is wrong, that he doesn't like, but he did it to save his ass in the next election. That's some principle. Go ahead, please.
So let me get this straight then. The Prime Minister says this is essentially a vote of confidence, but
Yes,
the Prime Minister was not in the House of
That's
Commons
right.
for the vote.
That's the kind of guy we have heading this country.
Wow.
He's there. He knows the results of the vote. He has deemed this as a vote of confidence. And already Jagmeet Singh says, "Okay, we'll vote with you." Trudeau, I mean, he's capable of adding, I guess, up to 200 or 300, or get someone to do it for him. And he says, "To hell with it." I don't know. Where was he? In the sauna someplace? I don't know. He wasn't in the House for the vote. This is one of the most important votes that this country has ever faced. Introduced for the first time in Canada's history, introducing this Emergency Measures Act, and Trudeau, which is Trudeau's idea, and he can't be bothered to be in the House for the vote.
And he's in town. I've seen pictures of him walking across Wellington Street to go to his office on that very day. Anyway.
You know what? And if a vote were held today, the majority of Canadians would vote for him. It's quite astonishing.
They did just 5 months ago.
Quite astonishing. Go ahead, John.
Rick says Trudeau wants 3 months of emergency measures, but in that time, who will determine what constitutes the next emergency?
He does.
Darlene says this act is a scare tactic combined with controlling us Canadians. Stop with the threats, Trudeau. That's a tongue twister. I apologize, Darlene. Lisa says, is it true Mr. Watson suggested selling the impounded trucks? What's going on with the politicians in Ottawa?
Sweethearts. Yeah, Watson. I've always had a lot of time for Jim Watson, but I'm going to tell you, his performance in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I don't find very impressive. Go ahead, John.
NDP thought they were the Labour Party for the people, says Wallace. Let me see.
That's right. The NDP, great friends of working moms. Ask the working mom out in Chilliwack what kind of a friend the NDP is. Go ahead.
Jeff Walker is on Facebook. He says local police can't deal with it or won't. OPP currently investigating several members for donating to the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah.
Tony says, I wonder who's going to pay for all these lawsuits against Trudeau. Susan says, we all need to be very careful what we post and say online for sure.
Let me just point something out.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be no problem. And the Civil Liberties Association is funded by members, okay? But don't forget, within a few days, more than $10 million was donated for the convoy. So there's some people out there upset. Well, when you get a single mom, working mom, donating $50, and you get thousands, tens of thousands of people applauding, you know there's something going on out there, folks. But the politicians, and I include the Conservatives to a degree in this, just seem totally oblivious. Folks, all of this is not happening by accident. There is a great deal of discontent, anger, confusion, frustration, and nobody seems to even want to hear about it. Go ahead, please, John.
Over to Todd on Facebook, who asks, will this whole emergency act be in place until the Ukraine and Russia conflict is over? And can we end up in a war with Russia?
Well, I mean, the only justification for it is a national security issue that's so serious that our CISAs and our own police can't deal with it. So maybe Russia is planning an attack. I don't know.
Jay on Facebook says, today Canada is safer, unified, and more free. Thank you, Justin Trudeau. Roberts.
You see, this is obviously a downtown Ottawa idiot who, lives in this little bubble. He lives in a little echo chamber. And that's one of the problems. There's a lot of people living in echo chambers here. I'm watching, I guess it was CTV last night, Power, whatever the heck it was. And we got this one guy who's supposed to be an expert. He's a university professor. Well, he says this. He says, I think that we're all going to come together now. I think that we've gone through a crisis together, and I think that we'll all be benefit. You know what? Bullshit. This guy is teaching young people. I mean, how idiotic can you be? There are very serious divisions out there, and nobody will listen to them. Nobody, to raise over $10 million within 2 or 3 days, there's something going on, folks. Something going on. Somebody, someplace in charge had better sit down with these people and figure out what the hell's going on, or we're in bigger trouble. John, I think we're almost out of time here. Listen, I want to thank all of you. We'll be back tomorrow, raising hell again. That's for sure.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.